Great, thanks so much. If I wander away from the mic and you can't hear me, yell at me. And
Do you want the hand up like you?
no, I think that'll be better this way. So I'll try standing here and see how it works. Although I have to say, it sort of makes you feel dyslexic to look at those two screens at the same time out there. So it's a strange group to present in. So my latest thing is that I'm a co-founder of Learn Launch. And I'm a member of 3 different angel groups. I'm proud to be a member of Golden Seeds. I always bring it up when I talk about what it is that I do in the Boston area and how important that is for Boston, which has a gazillion things going on in entrepreneurship and investing, but Golden Seeds is unique and strong there. And then the latest thing I've done is be a co-founder of Learn Launch, and I'll give a couple of paid advertisements for Learn Launch a little later on. So we've got 3 things that we're going to cover here. We're going to look at the ed tech industry and investing trends. And I've done those slides before a lot of times, but I'm going to try to speed them up a bit because they're going to speed me up if I'm not careful. Because the slides at the end, the evaluating an ed tech startup, are new, and I want to spend some time kind of going through them because I think they'll be helpful as we look at one of the companies presenting today, and we want to have some time to look at that. So just to move ahead here, I guess. So EdTech is really the story about digital learning and innovative solutions that result from the fact that digital learning is now available. And so, the parents know that their kids are digital natives. They know that they're going to live in a digital world, and they want them to be working that way. The cost structure of delivering education to the schools over tablets and the network is a lot cheaper than textbooks, and so it has the potential to be very disruptive. Digital presents some new opportunities too. A great example is that you can do the testing on a particular subject area right after it was presented. You know immediately what the student has or hasn't achieved, and you can go back and fill in pathways for the students, so-called personalized learning, that make it so that the student can get to the things that they missed or to the frameworks that they didn't already understand. So that's really different from the teacher taking home a big pile of papers in her backpack, getting around to grading the weekend after next, handing them back, and then finally the kid says, oh, I didn't understand, I didn't get a good grade, but has no clue about how it all hooks together. And the parents don't have any visibility either. So I'll be saying a lot of this about K-12, but you'll see as we get in here, I'm really talking about learning writ large, not really about K-12 itself. Anyhow, so there's lots of opportunities across early learning, K-12, higher ed, corporate training, and lifelong learning. There's just a ton of different things going on and things that can happen. We often present these slides in Boston, where we've got Massachusetts has been a long-term leader in education reform, and so some of the trends that are drizzling out into the rest of the country are happening there first, and it's a good employment sector for Boston. We already employ a lot of people in EdTech and can do more. But the underlying thing is that the market demand is there. 92% of the teachers in K-12 said they'd like to use EdTech in the classroom. And K-12 and higher ed is speaking for itself regarding using digital delivery in the classroom, roughly how we do business. Physical to digital, the personalized learning that we talked about before, the ability to have some type of accountability, to have everybody testing to the same standards. The Common Core is not a U.S. government standard, but it is a standard adopted by a changing number of states that tends to be around 46 or 45, and was developed by the Governors Association to really focus on these skills. And as you map the curriculum to these Common Core standards, it gives a new place for companies to get into the market. There's some extreme cost pressure going on. Any of you who have or are about to or have recently had kids in college know that the price is just going through the roof, and yet people are asking, well, what are we getting for this in a world where where 52% of college graduates are not employed in anything that requires a college degree. And of course, once you do things digitally, it's a global world. The market is huge, it's a worldwide market, but yet the competition is equally huge. It's a worldwide market. So those kind of things are going on. So how big is this market? So I'll start at the bottom of the slide. In the U.S., the education market is between 1.3 and 1.4 trillion dollars. So that's about 9% of the GDP. That includes everything. That includes the room we're standing in here. That includes the teachers that usually teach in this room. But you can kind of see that roughly a little over half of it is in K-12, a huge percentage in higher ed. Corporate, government, and other types of training make up the rest. And so those are very important numbers. And corporations will tell you that if the schools aren't doing their job, they're going to spend more training time and money training their own workforces. And so that will kind of come out of the GDP a different place in the industry. So ed tech, usually thought of as e-learning plus the technologies to deliver that, is about 42 billion in the U.S. And is growing at about 15% annually. In the rest of the world, it's even larger and even growing more quickly. So it's a big market. I have those details on these last two numbers that I gave you in detail here, and you can look a little bit at the center of the page, and you can see the difference in the U.S. growth rates between higher ed underlying education growth rate and the e-learning component of that. And same thing for K-12. So you can see that for those it's about 18 to 20%. And so those are quite attractive markets with that kind of growth rate. And similarly, rest of world is also growing at a powerful clip. Well, let's see, if we've got a big market, maybe we should invest in it. Well, guess what? VCs and angels have ramped up this ed tech investment quite rapidly over the last 2 years. In general, it's coming in at around $1 billion for each of the last 2 years, and you can see quite a bit of it is early stage. So that means that the new products that are just coming through now are becoming available. Happy to provide the slides if you'd like them. And then this last, the first quarter of 2014 was $500 million in a quarter. So you can see a lot of people think that this plate tectonics that are going on in this large and complex industry are worthy of some attack and are interesting. So if we're going to cram a bunch of stuff in the top of the funnel, let's see if it's coming out of the bottom. So yep, we've got some exits. And averaging around 60 exits a year for the last quite a few years, all kinds of sizes and different amounts. Some things go straight from the lab into it's a sort of a teaching lab somewhere, like this one at the bottom here, Learning Catalytics is Gary King's other company. Went straight from the Harvard lab to Pearson. Lexia Learning had been languishing around in Boston for a long time. Finally got picked up by Rosetta Stone. And in my investment, 10 marks in the top and the middle. We're going to do a case study on that later, but it was picked up by Amazon. So interesting stories there. So who's acquiring? Well, Pearson has a $2 billion a year is a $2 billion a year company and has a worldwide franchise, and they're one of the biggest acquirers, always have been. Houghton is big, just coming out of bankruptcy and starting to pick things up pretty quick now. All the sort of names that you would expect are there. Somebody like a Desire to Learn. You may not know exactly what they do, but they turn out to be a competitor of Blackboard's in the learning management system area. And so that's another group that particularly in higher ed is quite acquisitive. And there's a couple IPOs on the horizon. Don't know if they're going to come through or not. And this is a slide that I like to spend a couple of minutes on. I developed this slide thinking really hard about my own personal experience of having been the 13th acquisition of 3Com. And during that time that I was with 3Com for 14, 15 months, I helped with acquisitions 14 to 19. So that's pretty acquisitive for sort of the number 4 player in that industry at that time. During that time, Cisco acquired numbers 21 through 29. So what were the components of the industry that made it highly acquisitive? And so, some of these characteristics, the end user wants to change, the end user can implement the products, the market size is large. These are things that were true about that market. And this is my personal assessment of the ed tech market here. The end users are dying to change. The teachers, the principals want to do it different. In many cases, they can't implement the new products. They don't have enough bandwidth in the school. In lots of cases, they're not sure how that product would fit into the rest of the solutions that need to be in place. And the amount of data integration that might or might not need to be delivered in the products. There's nothing like Network World that does product reviews or consumer reports. It does product reviews that people understand, so the product review machinery isn't there. However, the market's really big, and the established players have a whole lot of turf to protect. And the types of new players that are coming into the market can also acquire some very aggressive attackers. All of the people who would like to put a tablet in your school would like to include some content with it to make it sticky and used. So those players all have big budgets, budgets that make the kind of budgets that have been the norm in the education industry, look like child's play. And there's certainly been a long period of acquisitions in education. If you go back about a decade, lots of things went in and out of private equity, often because they had very long recurring franchises. If you got that contract for school books in Texas, you were good as long as you remembered to keep taking the right people to the Super Bowl each year. You kept that contract. So those were very sticky periods, and so there's quite a bit of existing infrastructure in the industry. So this last one here about early stage investors and follow-on capital is the beginning of sort of a new category. We're starting to get specialist focused groups of investors. We think education is probably the most active. New markets here outside in Westchester is probably the largest. New Schools Venture Fund, did I say Rethink was the largest? I shouldn't have. Well, Rethink down in Baltimore is a very insightful group. New Schools and Learn Capital out in the Valley are quite huge. And New Markets here in New York is a pretty savvy player and has been in the industry a long time. Almost all of the VC groups are getting in at some level to something that would be classified as ed tech. It's a bit all over the map, and people are sort of in that early toe in the water kind of space. We'll discuss that some more in just a second. It turns out that people are creating quite a few accelerators in the category. Imagine K-12 has been in Silicon Valley for quite a while, doesn't touch things like higher ed. We of course think Learn Launch in Boston must be the best, and New York has had a couple of experiments that haven't stuck and has Kaplan that seems to be sticking. Philadelphia combines a sort of an open accelerator process along with a long-term business plan competition that went on for years. And 1776 it focuses on all the regulated industries: education, health, transportation, and energy. and little bits of other things happening in the Midwest. So this is the paid ad, and so I'll go really quick. Learn Launch is what we're doing in Boston. We brought together the campus, which is a co-working space. We have about 37 startups all crammed together, fighting for conference rooms. We have the Institute, which is our nonprofit. We just got nonprofit status as I was on the train on the way down here. And so we put together 50 plus events per year, bringing together the educators, the entrepreneurs, the investors, and strategic partners in a whole lot of different events. Try to give the teachers a chance to play with the products, try to we have a serious conference each January that talks about what's going on. And we have our accelerator. We select 7 companies at a time and give them a bunch of boot camp. And so here's some slides about the boot camp. This is supported by a teeny tiny microphone, just like most Techstars local operations are. So people come in, invest in our microphone, and we put a little bit of that in the company, so everybody has a little upside from all those guys, and then we use up some of it in our operations. So this is really what goes on. We have a lot of fun. We have a very diverse set of partners to really bring together very differentiated influences on these companies. People who've been tech entrepreneurs, people who run small investment banks. Eileen, who has done serious management in tech and then was in the Chicago Public Schools as a senior executive for a few years. So these are the companies in the first cohort. Here's the companies in the second cohort. And Boston's a great place to do this because we found these 240 tiny startups at the top. We have our accelerator companies and some VC-backed companies in town, and we have everybody in town. So the Pearson guys can look out the window and they can see the building that the Google Play Store for Education is being managed from. And they can come to the event where we're bringing together the guys from Houghton to talk to the new innovators and something else. So we're kind of a cauldron to get the ecosystem to realize, speed it up, guys. It's going really fast, and we can help you see what's going on. So having a lot of fun doing that. And if anybody'd like to invest in the Learn Launch Accelerator Fund, that was a paid ad. Okay, so I've got some slides here that are about evaluating tech startups and one quick case study. And these are new slides, and so I'm hoping not to slow down because I'm going too slow. But so you probably will have to stop me if you need to, or we can come back and answer questions. So on the right-hand side, there's a lot of money going in, but if you think about this as an angel, you really kind of need to think about what it is that's going on. So if you remember, I said we don't know the solution architecture. So when somebody comes to your angel group and says, guess what? We have a new electronic gradebook. Well, you wouldn't know that there's already 15 electronic gradebooks out there. And you wouldn't know that there's 2 or 3 gradebooks that are the leading gradebooks and everybody is integrating with them, and that they're becoming kind of the new hub for how products in the K-12 world are working together. And so you really need to do a little bit of education, work with the accelerators or work with somebody else to sort of make sure that you know what's going on. We had a bunch of people in Boston went into this company called Boundless Learning, and they were going to crowdsource making college textbooks. Well, guess what? You can't crowdsource making college textbooks. and so we have some VCs that I think will be writing up some money, although we're about to have yet another pivot. We've actually had pivots in 4 major Boston VC ed tech investments, major pivots, complete change in industry. So good teams, smart people, but somehow their original hubris and the way the real world market works weren't really in sync. So it's a little bit early days here. We've got a little bit of Wild West going on. So I've thrown in a slide here to try to say, as we try to think about these architectural structures, lots of different people are publishing architectures and industry structure analysis. Flybridge is starting a new analysis that they're trying to crowdsource, right? Oops, got them zooming ahead by themselves again. They're trying to crowdsource right now. And so really, it's gonna take some time to try to figure out where does this fit and how does, and what does it compete with? And sometimes it's economic competition of it. So one of the ways you can look down quickly at a firm and find out if they know what they're doing, and this applies to people who are selling at higher ed or to K-12, is to see if their financials reflect the budget year. Because guess what? The budgets get set in almost every institution in the country on July 1st. And if you've gotten approval to be in budget, and you're the size of entity that needs to be in budget, and therefore you got written in back in March, April, May, then you're in budget and the PO comes out in July and life is good. But guess what? If you're predicting that you're going to sell 4 times that much in December, you're wrong. You may get some incremental growth, you may get some people doing partial year contracts, but you will not get 4 times as much growth as you got in July in December. It doesn't matter who you are or what you think you know, it just won't happen. And so really, some of this is just the kind of things that a lot of time in an industry you get to know. And I want to thank Arc Capital. They're a group that comes in and teaches our accelerator companies. They have a long track record of going out and helping companies that maybe have their first 10 districts find their next 200 school districts. And so they've been doing that kind of business for a decade or so. And so some of this industry knowledge is a pretty strong thing. A few of these slides are sort of based on theirs. And so really, I think I already said all of this: lead generation and prospecting in the fall, relationship setting, final approval for budgets, and then budget cycle starts all over again. So really, understanding that's important. So K-12 and marketing and sales, it's a pretty complex story here. So people think, oh, let's go to the privates and charters. They move fast, they're smart, they aren't tied up in all those union contracts or whatever else they might be going on. But really, as a whole, they are probably only something like, charters are probably something like 6% of the total countrywide, and privates are really hard to get to. It's that same thing, a really tiny market. You have to go to this place in New Hampshire where somebody runs a very snooty school, and eventually you might or might not get a sale. So you just have to be sort of careful about sort of imagining that private and charter and homeschoolers will show the way. And the districts need it. If the company walks in and says, oh, look at all these charters that use our product, they won't get a sale in the district, most likely. English language learners and special needs are a highly regulated industry. The money comes from the Fed. You have to file with the Fed. How many days was that kid in the classroom? Exactly were they there? What was the learning plan? All of these complex details. We see a number of people making a boatload of money just office automating that interaction with the government. And so we have one in Boston for English language learners at Elevation. And it's like growing up. And special needs is a big issue. You'll find that in most school districts, 25% of the budget is being spent on special needs, and usually it's about 11% of the kids. So yes, the money's coming from the feds, but it may be very painful to administer. The size of district varies a lot. In Massachusetts, we have about 300 buying decisions to cover our K-12 base. Maryland has the same number of students, and they take 30 buying decisions to cover all those people. So it's a huge difference in how these organizations are constituted. How the structure has developed over time. Infrastructure is all over the map. This is a story about some schools have great broadband and others don't. I think the White House publishes, or the Department of Ed publishes a map that tries to give a by-classroom bandwidth analysis, but of course it's out of date and doesn't work very well. So people are doing that. Tablets, you think, oh no, only the rich kids have tablets. Tablets are coming in like there was no tomorrow. At least 25% of the schools have some tablet use. There's been 10 million iPads easy, maybe even 12. It's a little hard to count. in the US alone, and probably double that in the rest of the world. So it's a really fast growing trend. As soon as you touch the word tablet, you get into a whole boatload of acronyms. You know, one-to-one means every student has their own tablet and can take it home. Blended means that they're supposed to do most of their work in a standard teacher in the front of the room environment, but some of it will be flipped, a la Khan Academy, where you do the assignment at home and just do the practice work and the homework in the classroom. A card just means the tablets come around on a card, the kids take them off, use them for an hour, and put them back on the card. The apps are a free-for-all. There's just a gazillion apps. Nobody can figure out which are the best ones. There's 4 or 5 different. This is the best app to use if you want to teach phonics, and this is the best app to use if you want to know about earthquakes, or if you were trying to figure out how to instruct people on mitosis. There's a website called Teacher's Son to Teachers, and for 2 years in a row, the highest grosser on the Teacher's Son to Teachers website has been $1 million. So one teacher made $1 million selling their lesson plans and do other teachers. And usually teachers